The hospital hall was quiet that Christmas Eve, the kind of silence that feels heavier than noise. Outside the window, snowflakes drifted down, landing on the frozen glass. Families hurried past with flowers and gifts, laughter echoing through the corridors. But not mine. My son and daughter had wheeled me into the ward after dinner, saying it was just a precaution. I believed them, until I noticed they hadn't left my overnight bag. No sweater, no phone charger, no Christmas card. "Don't worry, Mom. We'll be back in the morning," my daughter said quickly, eyes darting toward her brother. Then they turned and walked out together, their coats swirling behind them. I waited 10 minutes, an hour, midnight. The nurse checked on me, pity softening her voice. "Would you like me to call someone for you?" I shook my head, staring at the doorway where they'd vanished. It was Christmas Eve, and I was alone in a hospital bed. Not because of illness, but because my own children had decided I was an inconvenience. When I asked the receptionist later if anyone had left instructions, she flipped through the chart. They said you'd be fine here overnight. Insurance already on file insurance. That's all I was to them, a policy, a liability. As the clock struck midnight, a carol played faintly on the intercom. Silent night. The irony wasn't lost on me, but in that silence I realized something my children had forgotten, the inheritance my late husband left behind, $5 million, every cent still in my name. And if they thought abandoning me on Christmas Eve would guarantee them the future, they were about to find out just how wrong they were. Because the next morning, I signed a paper that would change everything. I wasn't supposed to spend Christmas in a hospital. For 72 years, I had spent that night around a tree, in a living room filled with candlelight and the smell of roast turkey. Even when money was tight, Robert, my late husband, always insisted we make the night special. "Christmas isn't about gifts," he used to say. "It's about staying together." After he passed, I tried to keep the tradition alive. I baked cookies with the grandkids, their laughter filling the house. I hummed along to carols, wrapped little presents with care. I believed family was still family, but this year was different. I had felt a little short of breath the week before, nothing serious. My doctor said to take it easy. Still, my son Mark insisted, "Mom, let us take you to the hospital. Just one night. We don't want to risk anything." It sounded thoughtful, loving even. But something about the way Maisie, my daughter-in-law, tightened her lips made me pause. She never liked slowing down her holidays for me. The ride was quiet. I asked if they'd packed my overnight bag. Mark mumbled, "We'll bring it later." When we arrived, they wheeled me inside, filled out insurance forms quickly, then smiled as if rehearsed. "We'll be back in the morning, Mom." "Merry Christmas," Maisie said, her voice flat. They didn't hug me. They didn't look back. Lying in that hospital bed, I tried to convince myself they were busy. Maybe they'd gone to fetch clothes. Maybe they'd forgotten something at home. But hours passed. Families came and went. Children in red pajamas carried stuffed animals down the hallway. Couples held hands under the twinkling lights, and I sat alone. At midnight, I heard voices outside my door, Mark's low tone, Maisie's sharp reply. "She'll be fine here tonight." "Let the hospital handle it," Maisie said. Mark sighed. "Yeah. At least we don't have to worry. We can enjoy Christmas without the hassle." The words pierced deeper than any needle. Without the hassle. That's what I was to them. I turned my head away, tears blurring the blinking lights from the IV monitor. All night I thought of Robert. He had worked 40 years at the steel plant, saving every paycheck, investing carefully. Together, we built a life. The house, the small cabin by the lake, and finally, the inheritance. Over $5 million left in my name after his passing. Robert's last words to me about it had been clear. Use it wisely. And never let anyone take away your dignity. I thought my children would honor that legacy. I thought family blood meant something. But as I lay in that sterile room, abandoned on the holiest night of the year, I understood. To them, I wasn't a mother anymore. I was a bank account, and they had already begun calculating how to spend what they thought would soon be theirs. I wasn't supposed to spend Christmas in a hospital. For 72 years, I had spent that night around a tree, in a living room filled with candlelight and the smell of roast turkey. Even when money was tight, Robert, my late husband, always insisted we make the night special. Christmas isn't about gifts, he used to say. It's about staying together. After he passed, I tried to keep the tradition alive. I baked cookies with the grandkids, their laughter filling the house. I hummed along to carols, wrapped little presents with care. I believed family was still family, but this year was different. I had felt a little short of breath the week before. Nothing serious. My doctor said to take it easy. Still, my son Mark insisted, "Mom, let us take you to the hospital." Just one night. We don't want to risk anything. It sounded thoughtful, loving even. But something about the way Maisie, my daughter-in-law, tightened her lips made me pause. She never liked slowing down her holidays for me. The ride was quiet. I asked if they'd packed my overnight bag. Mark mumbled, "We'll bring it later." When we arrived, they wheeled me inside, filled out insurance forms quickly, then smiled as if rehearsed. "We'll be back in the morning, Mom." "Merry Christmas," Maisie said, her voice flat. They didn't hug me. They didn't look back. Lying in that hospital bed, I tried to convince myself they were busy. Maybe they'd gone to fetch clothes. Maybe they'd forgotten something at home. But hours passed. Families came and went. Children in red pajamas carried stuffed animals down the hallway. Couples held hands under the twinkling lights. And I sat alone. At midnight, I heard voices outside my door. Mark's low tone, Maisie's sharp reply. "She'll be fine here tonight." "Let the hospital handle it," Maisie said. Mark sighed. "Yeah, at least we don't have to worry." "We can enjoy Christmas without the hassle." The words pierced deeper than any needle. Without the hassle. That's what I was to them. I turned my head away, tears blurring the blinking lights from the IV monitor. All night I thought of Robert. He had worked 40 years at the steel plant, saving every paycheck, investing carefully. Together we built a life. The house, the small cabin by the lake, and finally, the inheritance. Over $5 million left in my name after his passing. Robert's last words to me about it had been clear. Use it wisely. And never let anyone take away your dignity. I thought my children would honor that legacy. I thought family blood meant something. But as I lay in that sterile room, abandoned on the holiest night of the year, I understood. To them, I wasn't a mother anymore. I was a bank account, and they had already begun calculating how to spend what they thought would soon be theirs. The day after Christmas dawned gray, the snow outside melting into slush. I sat up in bed, my legs weak, but my mind sharper than it had been in years. Elena noticed the determination in my eyes. "You look different today," she said. "I need to speak to a lawyer," I whispered. Without hesitation, she fetched her phone and handed it to me. I dialed Arthur Cohen, the same attorney Robert and I had trusted for decades. My hands trembled as I explained everything. The hospital, the whispers, the $5 million. He listened in silence, then said firmly, "You still hold full authority. No one can touch a dime without your signature. If you're up for it, I'll come by this afternoon." When Arthur arrived, his leather briefcase in hand, the sterile hospital room suddenly felt like a courtroom. He laid out documents across the tray table. His tone softened, almost paternal. Robert once told me over coffee, "If anything happens, make sure she's never left unprotected." He trusted me with that, and I intend to honor it. "Here's the deed to your assets, the trust Robert set up, and your will as it currently stands," he explained. I scanned the papers, my pulse quickening. My name was still there, bold at the top. Arthur leaned forward, lowering his voice. "You don't just have the power to withhold. You have the power to redirect. I blinked. Redirect? Yes. If you want, you can bypass your children entirely. You can leave the inheritance to a grandchild, to a charity, to anyone you choose. Legally, they have no automatic right to this money while you're alive. The words sank in like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. For weeks, I had felt cornered, powerless. Now I saw the truth. I wasn't trapped. I was in control. That evening, Mark finally showed up. He stood awkwardly at the foot of my bed, avoiding my gaze. Maisie hovered behind him, her eyes sharp. "Mom, we just want what's best for you," Mark muttered. Maisie slid a stack of papers from her purse and pushed them toward me. "Sign this transfer." "It will make things easier for everyone." I lifted the first page. Her handwriting filled the blanks, my children's names already written in where mine should be. My chest tightened. Arthur, who had been waiting quietly, stepped forward. "She won't be signing anything today," he said firmly, "or ever, unless it's her choice." Maisie's face flushed crimson. "You don't understand. She's old, confused. We're protecting her." I looked up, my voice steady. "Protecting me? By leaving me alone on Christmas Eve?" The room went silent. That night, after they left in fury, I sat with Arthur and Elena. Arthur laid his pen on the table. "The choice is yours. Do you want to keep the will as it is or change it? You could set up a trust for your grandchildren, or donate to a cause Robert believed in. Your children don't control the story." "You do," Elena touched my hand gently. "Whatever you decide, make sure it honors who you are, not who they've tried to make you." I stared at the blank line awaiting my signature. "Now I ask you, the one listening, if you were me, would you sign away your fortune to keep peace with ungrateful children? Or would you take back control even if it meant cutting them out entirely?" For the first time since Robert's death, I felt a surge of strength. They thought I was weak. They thought they could abandon me and inherit everything. But I had proof, on paper, in law, in my heart, that the story was still mine to write. That night, I couldn't sleep. The monitors beeped steadily, nurses whispered in the hall, but all I heard were Maisie's words. "It's only a matter of time. The money is practically ours." For 72 years, I had been the caretaker, the mother who cooked meals, worked double shifts when Robert was laid off, sat awake through fevers and heartbreaks. I thought love was a shield, but in that hospital bed, I realized love can be mistaken for weakness. They believed leaving me here made me powerless, but they were wrong. Robert's face came to me in the quiet, his voice echoing from memory. "Use it wisely, and never let anyone take away your dignity." For weeks, I had replayed the betrayal, felt the sting of abandonment. But now, the scene flipped. It wasn't me left behind. It was them, blind to the truth. The inheritance wasn't their future. It was my weapon. The next morning, I asked Elena to help me sit upright at the small table near the window. Sunlight streamed in, soft against the snow outside. I pulled out the documents Arthur had left and traced the empty signature line with my finger. Elena watched quietly. "Are you ready?" I smiled faintly. "Not yet, but I will be." When Mark called later, his tone was forced cheer. "Mom, we'll come by tonight. Just don't do anything rash." I almost laughed. Rash? Signing my own name on my own money? As I hung up, I knew the story had shifted. I was no longer the woman abandoned on Christmas Eve. I was the woman preparing to decide the future on Christmas Day. I whispered to myself, steady and clear, "They left me at the hospital, but they forgot I was never powerless." With that, I reached for the phone and dialed Arthur again. "Arthur," I said, my voice strong for the first time in months, "prepare the new documents. I want them signed tomorrow morning." By the time dawn broke on December 26th, word had spread further than I expected. Nurse Elena, who had seen too many lonely patients during the holidays, quietly told the staff what had happened. Soon whispers carried through the ward. Her children left her here on Christmas Eve. Some shook their heads in disbelief. Others clucked their tongues with sympathy. When Mrs. Peterson, an old neighbor who volunteered at the hospital, stopped by my room, her eyes brimmed with outrage. I raised my kids to visit even when I was sick with the flu. And yours? They left you alone on Christmas Eve? I nodded, shame and strength mixing in my chest. They thought I wouldn't fight back. That afternoon, Arthur returned with a stack of new documents. He laid them neatly across the table near my bed. "Here's the updated will and trust," he explained. "This bypasses your children entirely. You can direct the inheritance to whomever you choose." I flipped through the papers slowly, each page heavy with meaning. At the bottom of one, a blank line waited for my name. "And you'll need a witness," Arthur added. "Preferably someone not connected to the family." Elena straightened at his words. "I'll do it. I've seen everything with my own eyes. For the first time in days, I felt safe." That evening, more neighbors drifted in. Some brought small gifts, others just words. "We heard what happened. You deserve better," one said softly. And beyond the hospital walls, the whispers spread further. At Sunday service, I later heard, church friends murmured, "Can you believe they left her at the hospital on Christmas Eve?" The shame was no longer confined to these walls. It followed them everywhere. Maisie would have hated it. Outsiders knowing the family's dirty secrets. But the truth was out now, and it wasn't going back in. Later, Elena returned with a small black pen in her hand. She placed it gently on the tray table beside the documents. "Are you ready?" she asked quietly, her eyes steady on mine. My fingers hovered above the pen. My heart raced, not from weakness, but from resolve. Tomorrow morning, when the clock struck, I would no longer be a victim of their betrayal. I would be the author of my own ending. The hospital room was hushed except for the steady beep of the heart monitor. Papers lay spread across the tray table, the pen gleaming under the fluorescent light. Elena stood at my side, Arthur just behind her. I had barely touched the pen when the door burst open. Maisie stormed in first, her voice sharp enough to slice the air. "Stop! Don't you dare sign that!" Mark followed, pale and breathless, his eyes darting between the documents and my face. "Mom, wait! We need to talk about this!" I straightened, my frail frame suddenly steady. "Talk? You left me here on Christmas Eve. You did all the talking I needed to hear." Maisie shoved past Elena, slapping her hand against the papers. "This money is ours. You don't know what you're doing. People will think you're confused, senile." Arthur stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "I've represented her for years. She knows exactly what she's doing, and she has every right." Maisie's face twisted with fury. "Nobody will believe that." Before I could reply, Marjorie, the retired neighbor who had come with Arthur, spoke from the doorway. "I'll stand witness. She's of sound mind. This is her choice." Maisie froze, her confidence cracking. I reached for the pen. My fingers trembled, but not from fear. Slowly, deliberately, I pressed the tip to the page. Mark stepped forward, desperation cracking his voice. "Mom, please, don't do this. We're your children." I looked up at him, my eyes clear. Children don't abandon their mother on Christmas Eve. The words landed heavier than any gavel. With one steady motion, I signed my name across the line. The scratching sound of the pen filled the room, louder than Maisie's gasp, louder than Mark's sob. Silence fell. Then Arthur gathered the papers, sliding them into his briefcase. "It's done," he announced. "The inheritance has been reassigned. It is no longer theirs." Maisie lunged toward him, but Elena blocked her path. "That's enough," the nurse said firmly. "You've done enough harm." Mark sank into a chair, his hands covering his face. Maisie's fury turned to panic, her voice rising. "You'll regret this! We'll fight it in court!" Arthur shook his head. There's nothing to fight. The documents are legal, witnessed, and final. The aftershock landed like a hammer. Their future, the one they had planned so coldly, had vanished in a single stroke of my pen. I laid the pen down gently, the sound of metal against wood final, absolute. Then I looked at them, my son with his hunched shoulders, my daughter-in-law with her trembling rage, and I said softly, "You left me with nothing but loneliness. Now I leave you with nothing at all." When the door finally closed behind them, the room felt different. Not emptier, lighter. For the first time in months, I could breathe without the weight of expectation pressing on my chest. The inheritance was no longer a chain tying me to their greed. It was mine again, in the truest sense. Mark came back once, later that evening. He lingered at the threshold, shoulders slumped, eyes rimmed with red. "Mom, I didn't mean for it to go this far," he murmured. I held his gaze. "You stood by while she did it." Silence is still betrayal. He didn't argue. He just turned and walked away, leaving behind the faint smell of snow and guilt. The next morning, Arthur returned to finalize the documents. He explained in his steady, lawyerly way, "The funds are secured. They cannot touch them. You've directed a portion to charity, and the rest remains under your control." I nodded. It was exactly as Robert would have wanted. Dignity first, always. Elena placed a cup of tea on my bedside table. "You look different," she said softly. "Stronger." I smiled. "Because I chose. That makes all the difference." Now I turn this question to you, the one listening to my story. If you were in my place, abandoned on Christmas Eve by the very children you raised, would you still leave them your fortune out of forgiveness? Or would you, like me, finally take it back? Think carefully, because sometimes love is mistaken for weakness until you prove otherwise. As I prepared to leave the hospital, snow still falling outside, I felt the world open again, not through the lens of abandonment, but of freedom. Maisie and Mark had gambled on my silence. They had lost. And this was just one story. Because betrayal doesn't always happen in hospital rooms. Sometimes it happens at the dinner table, hidden in the ink of a will, or whispered in the shadows of a family gathering. And next week, I'll tell you about a set of siblings who discovered their father's will and tore each other apart in the process. The day I was discharged, the snow had stopped. The sky was pale blue, the kind that follows a storm. Elena wheeled me to the hospital doors, her hand warm on my shoulder. "You're stronger than you think," she said. I believed her. Outside, Mark waited by the curb. No Maisie, just him, hands shoved deep in his coat pockets, eyes cast low. "Mom," he whispered, "I'm sorry." I studied his face, the same boy I once held through childhood fevers, now a man crumbling under the weight of his choices. I touched his hand once, lightly. "I love you, Mark." But love isn't silence, and it isn't surrender. Tears filled his eyes. He nodded, and for a moment I saw the son I used to know. Then I turned away, stepping into a new life that was finally my own. That night, in the quiet of my new apartment, I lit a small candle by the window. No Christmas tree, no family crowding the table. Just me, free at last. I whispered to the memory of Robert. They left me at the hospital on Christmas Eve. But I walked out the next morning with nothing to lose. And everything still mine. The flame flickered, steady and defiant, like my heart. Now I turn to you. Would you forgive children who left you behind hoping to inherit your life's work? Or would you do what I did, sign your name and choose dignity over betrayal? Tell me below, because every family has its secrets, and your voice matters here. And remember, this isn't the end. Next week, we'll open a will that splits siblings apart, proving that sometimes the deadliest battles begin long after the funeral. Every family is different. If you ever face something like this, make sure you find the advice and support that's right for you.